5 years at Harrison College, living on tips and whatever my Aunt Anita could save up. 5 years to get a piece of paper that says I'm an engineer. Also, I can clean this man's house.
Hello, welcome to this look at Sunset. Today we're going to take a look at this game, Sunset, and do a little bit of discussion of interactive narrative and its effectiveness, or my thoughts on its effectiveness in Sunset. First of all, this game was a Kickstarter that I'm a backer on. Don't read a whole lot into that. I've backed about 40 projects on Kickstarter at this point, so don't read a whole lot into anything that I back as being a sign that it must be good or I must be really involved or into it or anything. The reasons I back projects are wide and many and varied. What attracted me to this project is the company Tale of Tales, which I've never played any of their games before, but they are an interracial couple that make games together. And, you know, why would Mike be, that would be a pull for Mike? Oh, could it happen that I am also in an interracial couple that has made games together? So again, don't read into reasons why I back Kickstarter. They're crazy. They're all over the place, and it's just, if I feel an attachment to a project, I back it. What also drew me into this project, though, was a bit of the description of the game, not just who was making it. And, you know, a description on the Kickstarter was, we always wondered what life would be like for the extras in such games. Speaking of war games. The people who are not heroes, the ones on the sidelines, the most of us. How does it feel to be one of the many victims of war instead of the hero? How does it feel when war is the backdrop for your day-to-day life? So I like the idea, the exploration of there's a war going on, but in this video game, that is the setting, not the focus. You know, it's just yeah, I'm involved. There's a war going on. You know, there's been other games that I've touched on this that have come out recently. So, you know, this is a good discussion, a good idea for a game, let's say. And there can be a discussion had around it. You know, another thing was, you know, they had the image up. Will you be a fighter, a lover, a traitor, or a friend? One thing about the game is that you play as a black woman. So it kind of sets up, you know, like, you're really, from what is the traditional narrative of a war video game, you're already, just by the setting here, set to the background. And, you know, what is life like? The character's name is Angela Burns. The place is Anchuria, a fictional city set in Latin America in the 1970s. And you're basically the housekeeper for a man named Gabriel Ortega, who is an art collector, possibly a museum creator, or involved in a company that runs fine art exhibits and things like that. And again, with its backdrop of the civil war of a country overthrowing its dictator. So my overview of the play experience, before I get into discussing the narrative and interactive narrative and how I felt it applied in this game, should give some impressions as a player, what I thought of the game. I spent about 5 hours to go through the game completely. One playthrough was about 5 hours for me. I think you could do it faster, but I think it would be hard to do it faster if you were actually into exploring the area and reading the notes and things like that, which is really what the game is about. So if you're just trying to rush through the checklist of the daily things that you have to do, I don't know that you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out of it. You know, one thing I noticed in there is that the game really is comfortable being in this interactive narrative thing. One thing I thought was cute was the use of Christmas Duck, which was a nod to Gone Home. Christmas Duck itself is an asset available on the Unity Asset Store. And the story behind Christmas Duck is that it was the first asset that they purchased or put in the game and Gone Home, and it just kind of found its way home and it found a fan base sort of around this item. So by Tale of Tales putting it in their game is kind of a nice nod to others in the industry. I thought that was kind of cute. Overall, my impression of the game is somewhere in the middle. Not great, not bad. I can't say that I came away from the game and felt any profound impact or emotion, really. Nor did I feel like I was overly bored, frustrated, and forcing myself to finish. There were some sections that felt stretched out, thin on content. There was a section where Gabriel Ortega is gone, so you keep going to the house. And I think this went over like a period of 5 or 6 weeks. It could have very well been 2 weeks. I would have been fine with that. I spent my time practicing the piano over and over again. When I started the game, I sort of absorbed into the role of I am a housekeeper. And as such, I should be an efficient housekeeper first. That is my job to Mr. Ortega. And this led to me picking all the blue choices. And later as the game kind of unfolded, I started to realize that there's blue and there's orange choices, and that I guess the blue choices are the being an efficient, non-commentary housekeeper, and then the orange choices are having a little bit more flair and flourish. And I switched to the orange not because I felt a narrative drive to do so, but because I was kind of in an effort to make something happen. I spent a good first hour sort of wanting something to happen, and nothing really was happening or occurring, and I realized, so maybe I need to engage more, and so I switched over mostly to the orange choices, and that's how I ran my game. And the other thing I did is I made sure every single day to set the date correct, once I realized I could do that every day. Don't know if that had an effect on the game, but I feel I should point it out. So when we talk about interactive narrative, this could be in a large, more mainstream game like Dragon Age or even Bloodborne or something like that, and it can be in a game like Gone Home and Sunset, where the interactive narrative is first and foremost. It's not a component of many gears in a larger system. It's kind of the system. I didn't feel Sunset really took advantage of being an interactive narrative. And it's healthy as game design to not just break down, the games that do it great, but spend some time breaking down the games that you don't think did it great. And analyze that so that you can kind of distill for yourself and put into words, and explain why you don't feel it did the thing well. Because by not just saying, hey, I don't feel it did well, you're not going to help yourself. And, I should have said this earlier, but the video here is sort of aimed at more of a game design discussion, less review. It's not really a review on Sunset. I feel there's plenty of other places you can go to get that. This is more of people who are interested in the game design, either other game designers, hobbyists like myself, which is squarely where I put myself as a hobbyist, and then also anyone just kind of interested in the process. Like, you don't have to even want to make films to appreciate the process of filmmaking. So you don't have to want to make games to appreciate the concepts in game design. So with that, sort of where I feel Sunset sort of had this dissonance with me is it didn't really use the setting, okay? The first thing here is that Angela is black, and Ortega is black as well. So there's no race in the game to really be played out on. It seems like the revolutionaries, one of which is your brother, also black. So there's no real use of race as commentary. There are a few comments about events that happened in the U.S., but they're kind of to the side. They don't really make a commentary. And that in and of itself, isn't the issue. I don't think that the lack of use of race in the game was the issue. What the issue was is that Angela is a black engineer in 1972 who moved to Latin America, this Latin America country, and we're never really explained why. Why does she move? And also, a black engineer, a degreed black engineer, okay, she graduated as an engineer in 1972, has some experiences that I think could have lent well to the game. And I'm saying here more personal anecdotes. We get a few of them when her brother becomes in trouble for participating with the revolution or the rebels. So we get a few of her background and where it came from, and some comments to race, such as having to go several streets over to the white neighborhood because the ice cream truck never came to their neighborhood. And I mean, I think that's a great line. That's a great bit of dialogue because that, really helps you think about what it might have been like to be black in the 60s, the 50s and 60s, growing up. And, I kind of wanted more of that, more of what it might have been like to be a black female engineer in 1972. And also to flesh out Angela as a character. I don't feel like she really got fleshed out in this. As to, some of these events that have happened in her life, how did she deal with them? But not only how did she deal with them, what does she think of them? What does she take from those events to present day? So I thought that could have been used better. And in the same vein as race, the setting of Latin America, I felt was too general. It's painting a very broad brush. Latin America is Mexico South. Right? So it is all of Mexico, Central America, and South America, the entire continent. What happened in 1970s in Nicaragua and the issues that happened there are not the same of Mexico or Brazil or Chile. It's too big of an area. So it left me with a little bit of trouble to try to identify and place what they were going for. I can understand why you'd want a fictional country. Maybe you don't want to have a direct commentary or draw a direct parallel if you're wanting to make a statement. But at the same token, I kind of felt like we're painting Latin America with a very broad brush and overshadowing some of the diversity within Latin America. Because, Latin America is pretty much defined as this region that speaks Spanish, Portuguese, and French, right? And that in and of itself is a pretty large spectrum. I don't know that necessarily people who are speaking French are naturally picking up Spanish and vice versa. The other thing, and this is kind of the culmination of the two. So the other two pieces or the backdrop to this comment really is that some of Angela's comments to different things in the house on that felt like very heavy-handed Hollywood caricatures of social activism. So, in particular, there's a comment looking at, the wood of a box and saying, this wood is used basically to house art, and, this could have been someone's crib. And that's a very Hollywood distillation and presentation, I think, of someone who's a social activist or, fighting for social change. Generally, the people I know in real life who are involved in this, that's not a comment they make. They're not really concerned with this sort of micro look at it of like, oh, your $3 could have helped someone that you spent on a coffee or something like that. It's more to bring an awareness, it would be more of, if using the coffee example again, we sit here and we drink this coffee and it's $3, but, we could, this over here, this $3 is an amazing amount of money, and just sort of raising an awareness and not using the coffee to vilify someone, but to point out the value that we place in that coffee and that $3 versus the value someone else may play in it. And there's a lot of comments that Angela makes towards assumption of Ortega's privilege. And these happen very early before we even have a picture of Ortega and who he is, why is he doing the things he's doing. And it's not to say that he doesn't have some privilege, but the comments to the privilege are sort of heavy-handed. They're just more of, why doesn't he use his money to save everyone? And it's like, well, it's going to be more complicated than that, and there's probably good and bad, and it's a complicated issue, and I just feel like it sort of got distilled down into a single soundbite, and it lost something. As far as the interactive narrative went, I think this Mass Effect style of blue and green, Renegade, Paragon, choices, flipped it from being something I'm considering the choice to something I'm considering which meter do I want to make go up. And even if I gravitate personally to a blue choice, if I've been working on orange choices, I feel that may hurt one meter or the other, and that may hurt the ending or something that that I may get. And it brings in this very video gamey aspect to what is a video game, but it brings in this gaming the system feel, less to being immersed in the world. And sometimes the choices, when they come up, like there was one with the polishing the silverware, and it's like, should I use this cleaner that polishes and cleans and disinfects, or should I breathe on them and polish them by hand? And I'm thinking, I would not want somebody to come in and breathe all over my silverware. That sounds horrible, I'm sure in the confines of your own home, you might have polished something by breathing on it, but it might not have been a utensil that you gave somebody else to eat with. Like that no, there's nothing about that that's appealing. And I don't want to do the orange choice for reasons other than the game is sort of doing the green or the blue choices. There wasn't a feedback on these choices either that I could see happening, and I kind of thought there was. One thing in the game is the clothing that Angela wears changes over time, and as I said, I started out and I was making very blue choices in the beginning, and then I switched to making very orange choices, and I sort of noticed, like, wait, she's wearing more orange clothes. And I wonder if I can get her to wear this really colorful orange dress. Like, can I really lean into this heavily? And the clothing is sort of a subtle way of reflecting her mood, which I was totally fascinated with. And then realized it wasn't a system. It was just to time of the year thing. And when it got colder, she went back to the longer blue. Not going to wear a nice dress, sundress in the winter, which, makes sense. But the color of her dress it might have been, hey, we're using blues and orange because those are the choices she makes, but it wasn't actually, at least it didn't appear to me to be on my choices. Because like I said, by the second 2/3 of the game, I was almost orange 90% of the time, if not more. Now, one thing that may have affected the decisions, the orange choices may have caused more notes to be left around, which is the way that you have dialogue with Ortega without ever meeting him. So that may have influenced that, and if it did, that's kind of a bummer, because that, again, would reaffirm this blue path as this very dull and boring path if you don't get these opportunities. But also, they never really responded to any of the comments or things that I made that I felt like it was kind of something that you might want to respond to. One note left on a painting said, stop looking at the art and get back to work. And I didn't read it as playful, but obviously from the two choices, it was intended to be playful, and I felt like that dialogue should have continued. There should have been more notes of oh, so you look at this piece because you really like it, or or something like that. And it didn't. They're all kind of one-off notes, they felt. Speaking of going from week to week and not really having this disjointed feel, Angela gives the dialogue of her impression of the week in the following week, right? So there's a little bit of narrative catch-up of what has happened, but a lot of times she's commenting on what happened the week prior. And it sort of does allow the player to miss some items and still get the story, because she's going to make that comment going up the elevator regardless of whether or not you found the item. But I feel that having the voiceover, having the comment happen at the moment that you find the item and the information that led to the comment would have been much more impactful into Angela's state of mind and how she was feeling and reacting to these things. Because I definitely felt as the game went on that it's Angela is this independent being. I am not Angela. I am not influencing these decisions and then having that experience. I am more observing Angela's reaction to things. I am more just going through as a omnipotent observer of everything. So an example here is decoding the documents. When you get to be able to decode the documents, and you choose to leave them out or not, the next day in the elevator, there's a comment that she didn't feel, or she felt outrage and anger learning the information that Ortega's company was involved in smuggling military equipment for the government. And that this commentary, I felt, would have been really impactful if it would have been there when you actually decode the documents. And would have influenced my decision on whether or not to sort of hide them or leave them out in plain sight to make it very clear to Ortega that I had decoded them. I am aware. Which, there's also the question of, is he leaving them out for you to decode at that point? Is this something I should be aware of? Is it something going to be accept? Am I going to, get people in trouble for? Am I going to get in trouble for? There's a lot of questions going around, and I felt like having that dialogue then would have really made that.
I couldn't even move after I read through the papers that Ortega brought home to sign. I stood there with my heart pounding and my face burning. His company is shipping military equipment for Anchuria. Weapons being used against his own people. The papers are encrypted, but he doesn't even bother to hide the code of the day that goes along with them. At first I felt bad, snooping. But after I read through it all, I knew my brother and his revolutionary friends needed to know about this.
So that's sort of my run-up and thoughts on the interactive narrative, and where I felt some roughness around the edges were. It's just my thoughts and my opinions upon playing it. If the game's interesting at all to you, if you're curious, then by all means, go play the game. If it doesn't sound like your thing, then don't play the game. This is not a review, and games are art. And art is going to affect each person differently. So, almost kind of like the idea of a review on art is sort of weird because it's a personal experience. It's not a universal truth. It's not a product review that you can just say, oh, we measured this thing and it performs at a 3.78, under these conditions. And, a 3.78 is just fine for my needs in this situation. That's not going to work that way. So I hope you enjoyed this discussion. Obviously, you may have different interpretations and different opinions, so feel free to either leave a comment on those, or make your own commentary on them and get your own thoughts out there. I would definitely love to see more of that happening. Thank you for watching.